It's so important for us to remember that where we are is not where we will remain. And, I think about stories like Esther, who was an orphan girl, being raised by her, cousin or uncle, Mordecai. And probably thinking that her life was not going to amount to anything significant, right? And she becomes queen and essentially ends up saving her nation, her people. When you think about stories like Gideon, who, when the angel of the Lord spoke to him and called him a mighty warrior, he's like, who, me? Like, I'm the least of my family. Like, who you calling a mighty warrior, right? And God literally uses him for like battle and to really defeat their enemies. You look at maybe like even David, who was a shepherd boy, and he's the youngest of his family, youngest in his family, and he had the lowly job of being the shepherd, which is not something to be ecstatic about. It's not something that gets praised or receives any sort of honor or respect. Yet God uses David to become king, right? To replace Saul, and again to go and do mighty things with David. There's so many other examples that you could use from scripture, but we have to use these examples to know and understand that where you are is not necessarily going to be where you will remain. God writes beautiful stories. He writes incredible stories. He writes stories that you would never think, endings that you would never expect, right? And so when you're looking at where you are right now and you're looking at whatever situations you may be dealing with or facing, remember that this is just another chapter. Like, you have to remember that this is just another chapter. God has the pen in his hand and he writes amazing stories, and you don't know how many other chapters are coming up. You don't know what God is going to do with your life. You don't know how much impact he's going to allow you to have. You don't know what places he's going to call you to, what opportunities he has waiting for you. There's so much that can happen. So just remember that God is the author of our lives. And when we know that, we understand that, we will never let a temporary situation cause us to give up.